Hello and welcome to Maximum Spice, the first ever Spice Girls audio book. The story was researched and written by Tim Footman, music is by Amanda Thompson, and it is read for you by Jennifer Hughes.
You can't pigeonhole Spice. Spice is more than music, it's more than just having an attitude. Spice is about a vibe, and we are different in the fact that there's five of us who've got different personalities and different ways of going about their life, but we respect each other for that. So it's like we've got all different, we've got all the best parts of people and just put them into like a cooking pot, and it's all just kind of exploded. But I don't think we can say we fit in anywhere. We just fit into the Spice Girls movement, that's it.
Back a few years. Think back to when nobody knew what girl power was. Pop music was a boys' club. Girls were allowed to take part as screaming fans or maybe as pretty backing singers, little bits of decoration who did what they were told by producers or managers or record company bosses, and practically all of them were men. If you were talking about five talented, good-looking individuals who were bringing fun and excitement back to the scene, they'd think you were talking about boys, because the pop world, in Britain at least, was dominated by five lads called Take That. If you'd said that five young women could be as big as Take That, bigger even, that maybe they'd even rise to the top where Take That never quite cracked it in the USA, everybody would have laughed. And if you'd mentioned a zigga zigga ha, people would have backed off slowly with glazed expressions. Because we're talking about a time before Spice. Before five funky, feisty females from all over England suddenly came to our attention in the summer of 1996. Before they sold 18 million albums worldwide, smashed the British chart record books wide open, made a hugely successful film, and hijacked the headlines in a way that no band had managed since the Beatles way back in the 60s, before any of the Spice Girls were born. But they did something more than that. They proved to a cynical world that a bunch of self-proclaimed ordinary girls could live out the pop dream on their own terms. Yes, they were sexy and provocative. Yes, they had lots of male admirers. But they weren't content just to be brainless dolly birds. There were going to be no lead singers, no bosses in Spice World. For the first time, the girls were going to be on top. So much has been written about the Spice Girls that it can be difficult to get to the truth. Some journalists have created the most hair-raising stories in a desperate effort to sell papers. Rivals in the music business have circulated rumours, and people with an axe to grind have devoted whole websites to stories with no basis in fact. And to be fair, the girls themselves and their PR people haven't always been slow to release stories which, if not completely false, are more than somewhat spiced up. So what is the story behind the most successful girl group of all time? What has it taken for these five singers, dancers, actresses and all-round characters to get what they really, really want?
Spice Girls started many years ago when we all met, when we were working in the music industry, either singing or dancing, and we became really good friends. Now in England, like Melanie and I lived in Northern England while the other girls are from London.
The British public first became aware of the Spice Girls in May 1996. The cable TV station The Box began airing a bizarre video which seemed to consist of five young women in figure-hugging clothing rampaging through a posh staid hotel, getting up the noses of the guests and pausing every now and then to sing a song that seemed to be about female friendship. Except it was in such a crazy mix of pop, soul, rap, disco and made-up words that the viewers weren't exactly sure what was going on. It had all the hallmarks of a one-hit wonder. After all, girl groups weren't to be taken seriously, were they? Before this time, the most successful British female group had been Bananarama, 3 women who were quite open about their lack of musical ability and seemed much more keen on the drinking and partying side of the business. And although the Nanas were very successful, they always seemed happy to be moulded by the men they worked for. From the Fun Boy 3 to Stock Aitken and Waterman, the team had put Kylie Minogue on the road to stardom. So who were these girls anyway? Were they just another bunch of record company puppets, or were they something new? Letters and calls began to flood into the box. Who are these Spice Girls? Where did they come from? Where can we get a record? When are you going to play the video again? And what on earth is Zigga Zigga Ha? Gradually, the story became clearer as the Spice Girls became a publicity blitz on local radio stations. Apparently, all 5 were hopefuls on the showbiz scene who'd got to know each other at auditions for various productions. They'd moved into a big house in the home counties and started writing songs together before approaching Whiz Kid manager Simon Fuller, who, in turn, arranged a record deal with Virgin. It was a real 90s fairy tale, right down to the fact that it was only half true. The Spice Ball had started rolling in early 1994 when Chris and Bob Herbert and Chic Murphy, who managed the late 80s boy band Bros, had placed an ad in the showbiz trade paper The Stage to form an all-girls singing group called Touch. Are you streetwise, ambitious, dedicated, was the question. The idea was to create a female rival to take that, who were then at their peak. From over 600 auditioners, they picked Victoria Adams, Melanie Brown, Melanie Chisholm, Jerry Halliwell and Michelle Stevenson. A singing coach called Pepe Lama was set to work on their nervous, untrained voices. The experienced songwriting team of Kyles and Thurkel were entrusted with the Touch sound, and the girls themselves were moved into a house in Maidenhead, Berkshire. All seemed to be going okay for a few months until Michelle Stevenson, who'd never quite gelled with the rest of the group, decided to leave. Desperate to find a replacement, Pepe Lama tracked down a former student called Emma Bunton and persuaded her to join. The lineup was complete, but other changes were coming. For a start, nobody particularly liked the name Touch anymore. Jerry thought up the name Spice. But that had already been taken by an American rapper, so, with a slight tweak, they became the Spice Girls. The Murphy-Herbert team saw they were onto a good thing, but unfortunately for them, they didn't have a contract. Relations were strained. The girls realised they had something special, and they weren't with the right people to propel them on the road to stardom. An experienced manager called Simon Fuller, who'd previously worked with Annie Lennox, offered to buy the managers out. Fuller quickly got to work on his contacts in the biz, and soon several record companies were scrapping it out to sign them. In September 1995, Virgin took them on, supposedly for a cool £2 million. Word was getting round in the media about these 5 uncontrollable women, but Fuller knew that. These days, talent and personality don't cut it if you haven't got a stonking video to go with it. In April 1996, the girls took over the St Pancras Hotel in London for the video shoot that would change everything. They were interviewed in the trade paper Music Week, and with the help of presenter Andy Peters, they began a string of TV appearances on everything from The Ozone to Surprise Surprise. It was a Laura publicity for an act that hadn't even released a record yet. It was a relatively new idea. Instead of releasing a record and arranging publicity around it, Simon Fuller was helping to build up a huge level of hype about the band. The record would only be released when the fans were besieging the record shops to demand it. The ploy worked. Wannabe was released in July 1996 and went on to hold the top spot in the UK for 7 weeks, as topping the charts in more than 30 other countries. At the end of the Wannabe video, the 5 girls hopped onto a conveniently placed bus, and the last we saw, they were waving goodbye. Some people probably thought that it was goodbye for good, that they had their little flirtation with fame and that they'd go back to being auditioning wannabes after a few weeks. Yeah, right.
She's quite similar to me, actually. Very up there, very loud, very grabs people's attention. She's always got great ideas, whether it be for videos, whether it be for song lyrics. What else? Oh yeah, she can be very serious. She's got a very serious head to her, which is kind of like a motivate kind of thing. I mean, once she sees something, she has to get it, and she just goes for it. So it's very how can I explain it? Freaky, man. That's it.
Geraldine Estelle Halliwell was born the youngest of 5 children on August the 8th, 1972 in Watford. Her mum was originally from Spain and had come over to work as an au pair, then as a cleaner in a shopping centre. Jerry was something of a wild child, dropping out of college and attempting to become a model, including some nude sessions that would later be splashed all over the tabloids. She also worked as a game show hostess in Turkey, a club dancer in Mallorca, and back in Britain as an aerobics instructor. Then came that fatal ad in the stage. Jerry was dubbed Ginger Spice, then Sexy Spice when the band hit the States, and a few other not-so-complimentary things by her non-fans. She quickly became the unofficial spokeswoman for the group, never ashamed of creating controversy and dressing in a way that was thought to be brash and raunchy, even by comparison with the rest of the girls. She made no apologies for some of the tackier episodes of her past. "I've got a skin like a rhino," she said at one point, and nothing the tabloids threw at her could hurt. Even bizarre rumours that she was really in her early 30s didn't get her down. She was where she grafted to get to, and she was going to enjoy herself. Although the band was meant to be a democracy, Jerry was often presented as the leader of the Spice Girls. In an early interview, she claimed that her favourite saying was, "This is what we're going to do," and there's no doubt that at difficult times, such as the split with Simon Fuller, it was Jerry who seized control.
She's very fit and very, funny. She's a very funny person when you talk to her. When she's got something to say, it's very important. And she gets us up and going when we're being a bit lazy, I think, all of us. She gets us up singing, "Come on now, we've got to have a singing lesson," or "We've got to have a dance lesson." She's a cool chick.
Melanie Jane Chisholm was born on January the 12th, 1974 in Liverpool and grew up in Winds, Lancashire. She was something of a loner and a tomboy as a child, but her first ambition was to be a ballet dancer. Her main obsession, however, has always been the fortunes of Liverpool FC, a distinctly ungirly trait which led her to being dubbed Sporty Spice. She helped this image along in the early days by announcing that her chat-up routine included flexing her bicep at any likely lad who happened to be passing, and also by the claim that in an emergency she was quite happy to use the gents' toilets. Mel C provided most viewers highlights of the early videos with her backflip in Wannabe and kung fu kick in Say You'll Be There. In the early days of the Spice Girls' fame, the tabloids and magazines such as Loaded didn't quite know what to make of her. Female pop stars were supposed to be obsessed with clothes and makeup, not dressed in Adidas tracksuit match of the day. However, Mel became something of a cult heroine amongst indie fans, the sort of people who wouldn't normally be seen dead buying a Spice Girls record. The weekly paper, Melody Maker, even splashed Mel on her own on the cover and trailed her around the Camden indie scene, checking out obscure guitar bands. Her armband tattoo also became a must-have for indie girls and boys everywhere, even if it comes in removable transfer form.
I'll talk about Victoria. Now, she's a lady of the group. She adds a bit of sophistication for us. Like, when we're all jumping around like nutters, she's like stood at the back going like, oh, sorry, apologising for the rest of us. But she's really cool. She loves her, you know, nice clothes, and she's always got a handbag. She's always in heels. Very business-minded, very astute. And she's a cool, crazy kind of chick, man.
Victoria Caroline Adams was born on April the 7th, 1974 in Hertfordshire. Unlike the rest of the girls, she came from a fairly well-off background. Her dad, who'd been a musician during the 60s, had given it up to start an electrical goods company, and young Victoria was brought up in a large house with her younger brother and sister. She had an unhappy time at school, suffering from bullying, and she didn't really settle until she got onto a dance course at college in Surrey when she was 16. But it wasn't until she auditioned for the Touch project that her dreams started to come true. Posh Spice, as she became to be known, was presented as a real lady with a passionate desire for Prada and Gucci clothes and accessories. She also insisted that she was never photographed smiling. When the first Spice Girls dolls were produced, Victoria insisted that hers should be redone because it didn't have the required sultry pout. She quickly got her own back on the schoolmates who teased her so much. The tabloid press made her a byword for class and sophistication. Do it with style is her catchphrase, and she claims that the last thing she does before bedtime is to give herself a full facial and then slip into her favourite silk pyjamas.
She's always out for a good time. She wants to go out. You know, she doesn't worry too much about things. She's got a serious head, but then also, you know, her main aim all the time is just to make the best of things and have a laugh. You know, and she sees something good in everybody.
Melanie Janine Brown was born on May the 29th, 1975 in Leeds. Although she went through the same round of acting and ballet lessons as the rest of the girls, she came a little bit closer to fame, being shortlisted for the part of Fiona in Coronation Street. To make ends meet, she worked as a private dancer in a nightclub in Leeds, although contrary to some reports, she was never a stripper or lap dancer. When the Spice Girls were put together, the most explosive relationship was between Mel B and Jerry. Both were extremely strong-willed and outspoken. When they were living in the house in Maidenhead, Mel had her tongue pierced, still a fairly extreme move for a star hoping to appeal to the younger kids market. This, along with her wild frizzy hair, a tattoo on her stomach, and generally unpredictable manner, led her being dubbed Scary Spice. Along with Jerry, she's usually seen as being the loudest Spice, claiming that her preferred chat-up line is not the very ladylike, "Get 'em out for the lasses." It was Mel B who provided the first moment of controversy for the band, when the wannabe video was banned in Malaysia on account of her very prominent nipples. It was cold, she explained. On a less naughty note, she's always been upfront about her bad eyesight, and her cool choice of designer frames has given confidence to self-conscious spec wearers everywhere.
Emma is the youngest member of the band, and she's very, very sweet. Her heart's always in the right place, and she's a real cutie, and she loves wearing her baby doll dresses, and she's sort of very loving member of the band, and she's very instinct-led. Like, she, you know, when we ask her about, if you ask her opinion on a piece of music, she either loves it or hates it. Do you know what I mean? She's always spot on with that.
Emily Bunton was born January the 21st, 1976 in Finchley, North London. Although she's the youngest Spice Girl and was the last to join, she actually had more showbiz experience than her colleagues. Having worked as a child model since she was 3, she advertised everything from Mothercare to Milky Bars before going on to stage school in Islington at the age of 11. After this, she went on the usual round of auditions, reaching the final shortlist for the part of Bianca in EastEnders. She didn't get the part, but she did appear briefly in the soap as, of all things, a mugger. When Pepe Llama tracked her down to fill the gap in the quintet, one of the managers said he was unsure about her because her legs were too chubby. However, her lack of supermodel skinniness doesn't appear to have deterred the fans, and she soon slotted into the role of Baby Spice. With her blonde bunches and pink baby doll dresses, her reported chat-up technique, I smile sweetly, play with my pigtails, and offer him one of my bonbons, may not have endeared her to feminists, but there are plenty of others who appreciate her. In the summer of '96, you just couldn't get away from Wannabe. But it wasn't just the tune or the video that was burning into the public imagination. The lyrics gave a hint to some kind of philosophy that kept the band together, and it went by the name of Girl Power. Of course, the Spice Girls weren't the first pop act to argue for feminism, to stress the idea of women sticking up for their own interests. Madonna was a shining example of this in the 80s, but there was always the feeling that she was just arguing for herself, not for women in general. Most of the musicians she collaborated with still tended to be men. American acts such as TLC and En Vogue have been successful, but they've always been seen as part of the R&B tradition rather than as pop acts with across-the-board appeal. More recently, the British duo called Shampoo had brought a fresh, if slightly cynical version of female togetherness, but their success was pretty limited except in Japan. The so-called riot girl acts like Huggy Bear created some publicity, and there were always American icons such as Patti Smith, Tracy Chapman and Courtney Love to fly the pro-woman flag. But none of these had any real level of commercial success in the crucial under-18 record-buying market. The Spice Girls, however, coupled their feminist ideas with supremely catchy melodies and a visual identity which showed that it was possible to be sexy and feminine without wanting to be a plaything for drooling males. As Emma said, you can be a strong female and still wear a Wonder Bra. Some commentators were cynical, seeing girl power as just another marketing gimmick, but others thought it made a refreshing change from the increasingly dull deluge of boy bands, especially the blandly pretty boyzone whose leader Ronan Keating announced he was staying a virgin until he was married. Pretty soon, hardly a week went by without Jerry or Mel B making some kind of girl power pronouncement in the pages of Smash Hits or Big. But it didn't stop there. Soon articles began springing up in serious adult newspapers, such as The Guardian. The journalists began an earnest debate on whether girl power really was the future of feminism. The Spice Girls were entering a territory where Take That or Bros had never been. They were being taken seriously. Some serious commentators said that the Spice Girls were, in fact, offering a poor image for young girls with their low-cut clothes and gaudy makeup. But supporters argued that, although the five were attractive, none of them exactly had catwalk model looks or figures, and they were ordinary enough for normal girls to identify with. Or, as Jerry so elegantly put it, we fart and burp like anyone else. But what was happening with the really important aspect of the Spice Girls? The music. Although Wannabe held on to its chart-topping position for 7 weeks, there were still many people who said the wheels would fall off the Spice wagon before long. It wasn't just another summertime hit that reminded people of holiday discos and would soon be relegated to the embarrassment zone of Mr. Blobby and Jive Bunny. But the girls were having none of it. In September, when the record-buying public was safely back at school or work, they released Say You'll Be There, a slightly slower, less obviously poppy hit with a raw R&B groove that had hints of Stevie Wonder. Again, there was a breathtaking video, a slightly futuristic effort set in the desert outside LA with karate kicks to spice up the dancing. Unsurprisingly, it went straight to number 1, although this time it only lasted a fortnight, falling victim to the Granny's favourites from Hell, Robson and Jerome. So, The Spice Girls had the singles market pretty well sewn up. But what about albums, where the serious money is? It's all very well persuading a 10-year-old to spend £2 out of her pocket money on a single she knows word for word already. But you need a full-length CD to be taken seriously, and that means appealing to an older market, less easily swayed by nice videos and catchy slogans. The Spice Girls' first album, titled Spice, was released in November 1996 and immediately became a huge commercial hit, but it didn't do too badly with the critics either. Apart from the singles, which might have begun to sound a little dull after months of exposure, there were hip-hop elements in Last Time Lover and If You Can't Dance, a gentle, slightly sentimental ballad called Mama, and plenty more poppy, infectious tunes that drew influences from all over the place, but added up to a definitely 90s sound. Spice was doubtless on the Christmas list of thousands of fans that year, but what the Spice Girls wanted in their stockings was a third chart-topping single and the much-coveted Christmas #1 spot, and they had it with Two Become One. A gentler sound than their previous hits, built to attract the older, less trend-conscious listener who might only go into a record shop once a year. With another eye-catching video, this time featuring the girls superimposed over footage of New York, the record couldn't fail. The girls equalled the record set by Jerry and the Pacemakers and Jive Bunny, as their first 3 singles all made the top spot. The Christmas edition of Top of the Pops might just as well have been a Spice Girls special, with the 5 stealing the show from Robbie Williams, whose success in Take That they'd emulated with no apparent effort. By now, Spice Girls' product was selling like crazy everywhere from Estonia to Japan. Things had developed to a state none of the girls could have foreseen when they answered that ad in the Stage less than 2 years ago. They were even invited to switch on the Christmas lights in London's Oxford Circus, only 5 months after their first single was released. But this was only the beginning.